This is Pat Iyer with Legal Nurse Podcast. I have with me Jenna Gaines, who is a doctorally prepared cardiac nurse practitioner, and we've been talking in her podcast about some of the nuances of diagnosis and treatment of MI, and how a failure to diagnose or a delay in diagnosis can have significant impacts on the patient. Jenna, could you give our viewer or our listener just a couple of highlights of what we covered in your podcast?
Yeah, definitely. We covered a lot today. We discussed the definition of an MI, the diagnosis of an MI. We discussed the initial workup of an MI and what providers specifically should be investigating in the patient who presents to them with chest pain. We discussed the type of the acute coronary syndrome and the treatment for each of those. We discussed conditions that can mimic an MI and how this leads to delay in diagnosis of an MI or misdiagnosis of an MI. And finally, we discussed that atypical noncardiac patient presentation that can lead to misdiagnosis of an MI.
As you can tell, we covered a lot in Jenna's podcast. Be sure to catch her show on Legal Nurse Podcast. You can get it directly from podcast.legalnursebusiness.com.